A Murder at the End of the World. It's a psychological thriller that follows an amateur detective attempting to solve a murder at an isolated Arctic retreat in Iceland. It does look very cold. Starring Emma Corrin as Darby Hart, a Gen Z sleuth, tech-savvy hacker, along with 8 other guests. They were all invited by a reclusive billionaire, played by Clive Owen, to participate in this retreat. When one of the other guests is found dead, Darby must use her skills to prove it was a murder before the killer strikes again. Think Clue with computers or Agatha Christie with a ChatGPT subscription. So we're going to get to the bottom of these crimes with the creators Brit Marling and Batmanglij. Thank you. Before we get into it, let's watch a clip.
Sometimes I think about throwing this into the ocean.
I think a lot of people think that. It's not a long-term solution. We do need them.
Do we? I don't think we do. I mean, if they'd have pitched them as tiny computers, which is what they are, they're not phones anymore. I mean, that's not what we're using them for. I don't think we would have bought into it so easily. You look at photos of movie theaters in 1940s, everyone's smoking, like everyone. It's like a huge cloud of smoke above them. You see it now and you think, fuck, that's so gross. But if you took a picture now, everyone's just hunched over their phones. It's the same thing, it's the same addiction, it's worse. At least with a cigarette, yeah, you're slowly destroying your lungs, but you're still you. With these, it's just, I mean, we're losing ourselves, I hate it.
The first time I felt myself fall in love with you was on my phone.
It's a very, very poignant clip, but almost the weather there doesn't sum up for the rest of the show, does it? Wearing those two.
No, we were really diving right in with that clip, right into the heart of it. Yeah.
Right into the heart of it. Brit, I gather you've been thinking about this idea in some form since 2018, 2019. I don't think outside of the Terminator I'd thought of AI back then. Were you thinking about that already? Was this something that was already in your mind?
You know, it's funny, we really were. We had some friends who were in that space, and we were interested in writing a story about a young woman who's an amateur sleuth who gets invited by a tech billionaire to his, secretive retreat. And we had some friends who had been on experiences like that, where you just get this invite, you show up to a coordinate, it's a tarmac, you get on a plane with a bunch of strangers, you don't know where you're going, you land, and we thought, oh, everyone's so willing to surrender to the largesse of the billionaire, but what are the billionaire's intentions and what's going to unfold there? And so in the early days, we talked about it being a billionaire who was doing AI, and a lot of our friends at the time would be like, oh, AI is so far away. Don't do that. Do Mars, do this, do that, do the other thing, but don't do AI. It's going to take such a long time. And then in the course of writing and making the show, of course, ChatGPT, all these things have become sort of commonplace now, but at the time it was kind of a leap, yeah.
Yeah, prescient, right? We weren't talking about ChatGPT. Most people didn't know it before last summer.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Were you aware of ChatGPT while you were writing this show? Was that something that you'd...
Well, we had a friend who gave us early access to a beta version of ChatGPT, and when we actually put a scene or an idea for a scene into ChatGPT, and we were like, how would you write this? And it did a version of it. And it was like laughably bad. So we were like, oh, everybody was right. This is a really long way away. But of course, the thing about technology is it is exponential. So in the gap of that, which was, about a year, then the version that we all know went public, and it had made significant improvements from the one that we messed around with, yeah.
Did you put that script back into it to see if it improved?
We haven't touched it since.
I wouldn't blame you, given how the show ends. Emma Corrin plays Darby. Did you watch The Crown and think, Princess Diana would make an excellent hacker/coroner?
No, but what's preternatural about Emma Corrin, what blows my mind, what still blows my mind, is that Emma and Diana could not be more different in the way they look or carry themselves, but Emma became Diana. It was like on a mercurial level, and it's just a phenomenal thing to witness. And I was sure that after 6 months of shooting, I could go back and watch The Crown and see Emma's tells when watching the Diana scenes, but I watched them right after shooting, and that was someone completely different than Darby and someone completely different than Emma. It was Diana there.
Yeah, no, fair enough. GQ said, you're bringing back hacker cool. Darby is the coolest hacker since Angelina Jolie, as Acid Burn. That's not a bad thing to say,
Not bad at all, no.
You guys you created the OA. There you go. There's a little bit more sci-fi and fantasy in this. Murder at the End of the World is a little bit more outside of the AI, grounded in the real world, right? Was that important to you?
Well, the sci-fi fantasy of A Murder at the End of the World is that when we started writing the scripts, this stuff was fantasy. It just became hyper real by the time we finished the show. So that part is even more uncanny than the OA. Though we did predict Joe Biden becoming president on the OA, so.
No, fair enough. Yeah.
They know, yeah.
We have some OA fans in the house, evidently. Okay.
Love y'all.
The show takes place over 2 timelines. Can you talk about that? On one hand, there's this story of Darby and Bill and their tale, and then obviously the other is Bill's murder and this retreat and snowstorm. Can you talk about the path, what you wanted to take through these 2 timelines?
Yeah, I think part of the 2 timeline thing was that we found that in making, like, Twin Peaks is one of my favorite shows of all time. Love that show, totally amazing. And one of the things I find when we're watching a murder mystery like that is, it was like, okay, well, what if Laura Palmer, could you make her the detective? And can the audience get on board with that? Like a young woman who's like an ingenue. And we set up, to do that in the first chapter, and we realized that as we were writing the scripts, turning them in, people just didn't believe. They just didn't find it credible. It always rang like a sort of Nancy Drew tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. So we found
because of her age?
Because of her age, because of her gender, because of her beauty. It was like, why should she have the authority without a badge, without a gun, to stand over a victim and, tell us how she's going to, find the truth? And so we had to keep going back into the past, basically, and telling her origin story as the coroner's daughter, as a young woman in these chat forums, doing amateur sleuthing, that she'd banked her 10,000 hours, so that by the time you're meeting her in her early 20s, she really has credibility and authority. And that past timeline kind of always served that purpose of reminding the audience when she's sitting down and interviewing someone, she deserves to be there. She sort of has the bona fides. But it was interesting because I don't think when we started, we realized just how much work we'd have to do to make it feel credible.
Essentially, one of those timelines is backing up why she's able to succeed in the second timeline.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, another goal of ours was to try to make kind of hot-blooded mystery. I love mysteries, but they can often be quite cerebral and clinical, and we wanted to make something that had all the feels, and another aspect of that was, I think, going back in time and showing her relationship with the victim. So many murder mysteries, there's a separation between the detective and who's past. And in this story, we brought those things together. You've lost someone and you've got to solve it, but it's also, someone you knew very intimately. And so the past timeline sort of also serves the purpose of telling you that story. And
there's some really sad scenes in that, the sadness between the 2 characters, right?
Yeah, very much so. Or you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say also, when you switch the genders from the trope, you have an interesting thing because, if you kill off Laura Palmer, people don't really, they don't expect to see Laura Palmer or get to know her. But if you kill off Harris Dickinson, people want to know his backstory. They want to know who he is. They want to care about him. So we felt it our responsibility to do that.
Yeah. When they're going down into the basement, it's also pretty spooky.
Very spooky.
Really like sort of horror almost, right?
Yeah, I think part of what we were also trying to bring to the genre is the feelings that you really have. It is very scary to go down the basement stairs of a known serial killer's house and see what might be lying under the fucking staircase. I mean, that's terrifying. And sometimes you watch these murder mysteries and everyone's just like, you know, and they just like go, and you're like, what? This is terrifying, you know? So we tried to make you feel that what's amazing about Darby is not that she's unafraid, but that she is afraid, but she goes down the stairs anyway. And like, how can we put you inside that fear and then also show you the ways that she continually surmounts it, you know?
I imagine when you were researching, I can't imagine there's anyone out there that's actually like Darby Hart, but did you find people online that were sort of doing the things that Darby is doing?
I mean, I think the person who's like Darby Hart is Brit. When Brit was young, in her 20s, she was a lot like the character, and I think we put a lot of those details in there.
Still waiting for my opportunity to go down the basement
I was going to
stairs.
say, when you say that it's a lot like Brit, are we talking in the terms of being online? Are we talking about going into scary men's houses? What are we looking at here?
Good questions. When I first met Brit, I was amazed that she felt that anything was learnable. You know, you could learn something if you put your mind to it, and you practiced it through hard work. And I hadn't grown up thinking that things were possible, and it was meeting Brit when I was 20 that taught me that things were possible. So, you know, when we moved out here, and I wanted to be a director, and Brit wanted to be an actor, no one was giving us those jobs. And so Brit was like, well, we'll just teach ourselves how to screenwrite. And, you know, I didn't think that was possible, but over 3 years in the different various public libraries around LA, on nights and weekends, we taught ourselves how to screenwrite. And that's really testament to Brit. And then...
That's very...
And I think Darby has that ability where she feels self-possessed. And I actually know a lot of young women who are like that, but you don't see that on screen. And so that was really important, I think, to Brit and to me to put that on screen. And Emma did a great job of embodying that person.
Very nice. In addition to writing this, creating this, you also star in this. You play Lee. You play Clive Owen's wife. How do you find those two things? How do you find being in this as well as creating this world?
Challenging, which is why on this I really wanted to take the time and space to direct. And so I was like, I can't be in every scene, you know, which was one of the great pleasures of the OA, was being in it all the time. But it was also really hard to show, create, and write and be in almost every frame. So it was nice to step back a bit and play a supporting role so I could do those other things. And Lee was an amazing character. Like it was really cool to read about that world, and there have been really interesting women inside that space. They just don't necessarily get the same.
Yeah, because she's not just the wife. She's not just the wife. She's also this incredible hacker in her own world.
Yeah, an incredible hacker and somebody who I think, you know, Darby grew up admiring, and then brings an interesting 90s, early 2000s hacker skill set, you know, to what Darby knows from her amateur sleuthing world, which is a little different. And I think by the end of the series, you see the ways in which their different backgrounds in hacking sort of complement each other. Lee's is a little more analog, old school. Yeah, so it was fun.
I don't want to give away the ending just in case anyone hasn't seen this here, but did you have the ending in mind in terms of the how done it, the who done it, when you were starting this process, or did that come as you were writing this?
You know, the funny thing about, sometimes stories sit and incubate between us for years. Like, we have one story right now that's going on, I don't know, 20 years?
Since 2007, so almost, 3 years, 17 years.
17 years of incubating between us, and constantly it evolves, and we tell each other different pieces of that story, and things happen in the world where we're like, that is useful for this, and we never sit down to write something until it has a beginning, middle, and end, because I really think you don't know what a story is until you know its ending. And so with this, we had been interested, actually, since we were working on OA2, we were really interested in the idea of this world, the tech billionaires' retreat, and the characters that might populate it. And we thought we might even fold that into the second part of OA, but it just hadn't matured yet. And then when the ending of the story came to us, we were like, that's a story we need to tell, and we need to tell it now. and it kind of jumped in the queue of stories. There were like 7 other stories we wanted to tell before it, and then the ending came, and we were like, okay. And then it was just its time, I guess.
And it's interesting because when we pitched the story, we had multiple offers to make it. And then the Amazon executives called our agent and was like, we're just checking. Did the AI do it? Because we can't buy it if the AI did it. But
Wow, okay. I know it's labeled as a miniseries, labeled as a limited series, but as far as I could tell, Darby, Lee, and Zuma are still alive. Have you thought about the second Murder at the End of the World?
I suppose it's possible, yes. But we'd have to wait again for a good ending. You know, I mean, we try to never, telling stories is so hard, and it's only become more challenging, and it is such a big apparatus that you have to get up, and so many people involved, that we always try to make sure that we really feel like we have something to say, and that those characters are the best characters to articulate it. Yeah. But who knows?
Because we've also learned what it's like to leave a story unfinished.
Yes,
So.
yes. Well, look, on that note, please thank Brit and Sal.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.